asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om. Peace, peace, peace. So this year we have selected for study a text of classical Advaita Vedanta. Surprise, surprise. What did Mataji say this time when she came to give a talk at the Vedanta Society this Sunday? Central command for, she said, this is central command for Advaita Vedanta. So the text we have selected is Vakya Vritti, this one, which you have got in your hands. Vedanta, as we know, is based on the Upanishads and Bhagavad Gita and the Brahma Sutras. Together they are known as the Prasthanatrayi, the triple foundation of Vedanta. And also other books associated with that, with the commentaries written by Adi Shankara on the Upanishads, on the Brahma Sutras, on the Bhagavad Gita, plus a wide array of texts like this one, which are called Prakarana Granthas, introductory texts. But we need not be bewildered. One elegant thing about Vedanta, at least Advaita Vedanta, is that the whole teaching, all of this vast literature, can actually be put in one sentence. So this one sentence is called a Mahāvākya. It's called Mahāvākya. Great sentence, great not in the sense of a long sentence, of which there are plenty in Sanskrit. Very long sentences. In fact, the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita by Sri Ramanujacharya, the great master of Vishishtadvaita Vedanta, the first sentence of the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita by Sri Ramanujacharya, it runs to one whole printed page without any stop. He's describing the glories and excellences of God. So there. But not a long sentence. Here Mahāvākya means arthato, in terms of profundity of meaning. How profound the meaning is, how deep the meaning is. In that sense, Mahan. Mahan means great or vast. Vast indeed is the import of these sentences. It's not just one sentence, the famous Tattvamasi, but there are others also, we know. There is aham brahmāsmi, I am Brahman. There is prajñānam Brahma, consciousness is Brahman. There is ayamatma Brahma, this very self is Brahman. These are called Mahāvākyas, and they have been conventionally selected from the different Upanishads, from different Vedas. There are many such sentences, but 4 have been taken by convention, one from each Veda. The Mahāvākya, the definition of Mahāvākya is akhandartha bodhakam vakyam. That means a sentence which expresses the absolute identity of Jiva and Brahman, of you are the absolute. Any sentence in the Upanishads, or in the Vedas in fact, which expresses this, can be called a Mahāvākya, but by convention we have taken 4. Anyhow, the point is, all of Advaita Vedanta, all of Vedanta is expressed in these Mahāvākyas. And remember, whenever we are talking about Vedanta here, talking about Advaita Vedanta, that's the tradition. So Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Sutra, they are common to all the Vedanta schools. All Vedanta schools take them as sacred, scriptural, and write commentaries on them. But these books like Vakya Vritti and other such books, these are particular to a school of Vedanta, which is Advaita Vedanta. So a teacher from a Vishishtadvaita school, or say the Dvaita Vedanta school, would not accept the conclusions of this text. But we are following the Advaita Vedanta tradition. There are many such texts, many of them written by Shankaracharya himself, many more attributed to Shankaracharya, but probably written later, many written by post-Shankara Advaita masters. And we are familiar with some of them. We have done Drig Drishya Viveka, which I often refer to. It's one of my favorite texts. The uniqueness of that is it gets down to business straight away. The first verse itself, it points to our own reality. Who am I? We have done Aparoksha Anubhuti. We have also done Vedanta Sara. Traditionally, when Vedanta is studied, for example, we as brahmacharis, when we were introduced to classical Advaita Vedanta in our training center in Belur Math in India, traditionally the text which was used to introduce Vedanta to us was Vedanta Sara. In some other organizations, orders, Tattva Bodha is used. So Vedanta Sara, we have studied that. It's there on YouTube, you can see. And one more text, Prakarana, we are doing this time. This is Vakya Vritti. What does this mean? Vakya Vritti. Vakya means sentence. Vritti means the mode of deriving the meaning of the sentence. Basically the meaning. Understanding or deriving the meaning of the sentence is Vritti. So Vakya Vritti. Meaning of a sentence, but not any sentence. It is this Mahāvākyas, which encapsulates all of Vedanta. So what is the meaning of tvam asi? That's the whole subject matter of this text. Although in this book you have two texts. If you see, you have got Vakya Vritti to begin with, and there's another one, Atma Jnana Upadesha Vidhi, which means the method of teaching the wisdom about Atman or the knowledge of Atman. Both of them are attributed to Shankaracharya. Vakya Vritti is more famous, and the other one less so. Both of them more or less teach the same thing. But the Vakya Vritti, of course, is more famous, and this is the one we are going to study. It's a short text. All it does is tells you the meaning of Tattvamasi. But in doing so, it teaches us the essence of Vedanta, of Advaita Vedanta. I think everybody's got the book, right? Yeah. Oh, just by the way, not relevant to the book, but I just remembered, we also have a selection of other books here, right behind you, and our volunteers are there. Vedanta books, books on Sri Ramakrishna, the direct disciples. So do take a look and pick up the books when you like to buy some of them. So, Vakya Vritti. And over the next few classes, we will study this text together. I will read out the Sanskrit, you chant after me. Again, no pressure, you don't have to know the Sanskrit. It's just nice to hear the original language and chant the original language. But I'll do everything else in English. So even if you don't know a word of Sanskrit, you won't miss anything. Let's dive straight into it. Yes. If you open the book, oh, there it is. Vakya Vritti means exposition of the sentence. Okay, so translation is there. Meaning of the sentence. What sentence? That thou art. Tattvamasi. That's the meaning. And it starts with Sri Ganeshaya Nama, salutation to Sri Ganesha. And then comes the Mangalacharan. Mangalacharan means the auspicious invocation. So it was the tradition in writing these Sanskrit texts that you start with a salutation to God and to Guru, generally to God and to the Guru. And here also, no exception, Shankaracharya starts with a salutation to God in the form of Vishnu, Narayana, Vishnu, and to his Guru. And Shankaracharya's Guru, does anybody remember who was Shankaracharya's Guru? Govindapada, not Gaudapada. Gaudapada was his Guru's Guru, Grand Guru. And they actually say that in Uttarakhand, they will say Guru, Dada Guru. Dada Guru means like grandfather. So Gaudapada's disciple was Govindapada, and Shankara Bhagavatpada was the disciple of Govindapada. All right, let's start with the invocation. First, invocation to Guru, to God, and then to Guru. I'll chant, and please chant after me. Sargasthiti pralaya hetumachintya shaktim. Sargasthiti pralaya hetumachintya shaktim. Vishveshwaram vidita vishwam anantamurtim. Vishveshwaram vidita vishwam anantamurtim. Nirmukta bandhanam apara sukhamburashim. Nirmukta bandhanam apara sukhamburashim Shri Vallabham Vimalabodhaghanam Namami Shri Vallabham Vimalabodhaghanam Namami. I'll read out the translation and then we'll look at it closely. I bow down to that pure consciousness, an ocean of unlimited happiness, which is Vishnu, the beloved of Shri, the all-knowing Lord of the universe, assuming manifold forms, yet bereft of all bondage, possessing an inscrutable power, and hence the cause of the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the universe. All right, salutation to God. Sargasthiti pralayam achintya shaktim. Sargasthiti pralaya hetum achintya shaktim. What does that mean? Sarga means creation of the universe. Sthiti means existence of this universe. Pralaya means dissolution of this universe. The cause of all this. Where has this universe come from? How is it existing right now? What holds it together? And where will it ultimately go? Cause of this universe, existence, creation, and dissolution of this universe. The cause of this is who? Is God. This is the definition of God in all theistic religions. Wherever you have a religion which believes in God, so you have Hinduism, all the various strands of Hinduism, Vaishnavism, Shaktaism, Shaivism, and they all believe in the existence of God. The Vaishnavas will call it Vishnu. Shaivas will call it Shiva. The Devi worshippers, Shaktas, will call it Devi, Durga or Kali. Or in Christianity, Father in heaven. How do you define God? First of all, one common definition will be the creator of this universe, the creator of everything. In Hinduism, a complete definition would be creator, preserver, and ultimately the dissolver, from whom this universe has come, in which this universe exists, and into which this universe disappears. It's the definition of God. The moment you say the power which creates, projects, sustains, and dissolves this universe, you're referring to God. Ishvara, Bhagavan. And here he says Vishnu. Where does he say Vishnu? Shri Vallabham. There's a word. Shri Vallabham means the husband of Shri, of Lakshmi. So Shri Vallabha, which is Vishnu. How does he do this? By Shakti, by power. So the Shakti of Bhagavan, of Vishnu, is characterized as Achintyam. Achintyam means inconceivable in two senses. One is inconceivable in the sense of limitless. We cannot imagine with our limited power, our own limited power as little living beings, or our extended powers with all our machines and our science and technology, still limited. Or the power which we see in the universe, so powerful. The sun pouring forth tremendous energy. Like thousands of nuclear bombs being set off continuously. That's the power of the sun. And there are so many such stars. And why go so far? I remember when I was in Boston when the virus first struck, the coronavirus, the pandemic. And that's where I first heard the term social distancing. Yeah. And I remember, unfortunately, I won't forget, because they had organized a big event for a Vedanta talk at Harvard University. There's supposed to be 250 people. And when I went there, there were 25. Why? It's a new term, social distancing. So the whole hall, but with gaps. We had never seen that earlier. This is the first time I heard the term. Anyhow, I was going to the hall in a cab, and the cab driver was a Middle Eastern. He said to me, that is real power. What's real power? That tiny thing. You see, everything stopped. His heavy accent, he was saying, everything stopped. Your big Harvard University comes to a standstill. The world is stopped. A tiny thing. There's power. And yet more power than all of this, the source of all of this, Achintya Shaktim. That's one meaning. Inconceivable power. I was just reading Swami Vivekananda in the Inspired Talks. He's saying, all of this whatever we see as the laws of this universe, one, or we consider to be fate, karma, law, why is anything happening at all? All of this is the will of God. Simple, direct statement. We don't, if you look at it physically, this universe controlled by certain inexorable physical laws, that, or if you take an even deeper look, why is anything happening in life? And we say karma, we say fate, we say all of that. Even deeper look to it is that it is the will of God. So that achintya shaktim. So that's one meaning. Inconceivable power in the sense of incredible, limitless. We cannot even think about it. Beyond our imagination. That's one meaning. The other meaning is a technical meaning in Advaita Vedanta. Inconceivable means anirvachanya. I'll just tell you in brief and then we'll move ahead. Anirvachanya means it cannot be determined either to be ultimately real or either existent or non-existent. Let me repeat that. Inconceivable in what sense? Inconceivable either as existent or as non-existent. Why? Truly existent is Brahman, the ultimate reality. And yet we cannot dismiss this word as non-existent also, seeing as everything is happening here, even the Vedanta class is going on here, right? So it cannot be dismissed as non-existent. According to Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is the only existing thing, and this world and its cause, that power, it cannot be said to be ultimately existent like Brahman, but it cannot be dismissed as non-existent also. So you cannot say whether it is ultimately real or you cannot dismiss it as being unreal also. In that sense, anirvachanya, inconceivable, achintyam. In fact, the whole of another school of Vedanta, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, ISKCON, Hare Krishna, the whole system, it pivots. The pivot is this idea, achintya bheda bheda, inconceivable identity in difference. Here is this difference, God and we are all different. This entire universe, there is separation, and yet they are all one reality. God has an inconceivable identity in difference. The powers of God are different from God and yet one with God. How? Inconceivable. I won't go deeper into this. Advaita Vedanta puts that inconceivability, the paradoxical nature, in Maya, in power. The point I wanted to make was another philosophy like the Gaudiya Vaishnava, Achintya Bheda Bhed, they put that paradoxical nature, that inconceivability between God and His powers, Krishna and the powers of Krishna, the relationship between Krishna and the gopis, the powers of Krishna, is inconceivable. Identity and difference. They are one and yet different. In Advaita Vedanta, what is done here is that power itself is inconceivable, not the relationship between Brahman and that power. So the power itself is inconceivable. Anyway, I enjoy that stuff, but it's not necessary. What else? Vishveshwaram, the Lord of this universe. As Swami Vivekananda said, whatever you understand it, you may be an outright atheist and materialist, and you say this is universe governed by law. Or you may be like all schools of thought in India, believer in karma, in fate. You don't even have to be a philosopher. In India, it's a common thing to say. They will say, my fate. In Bengali, they say kapal, niyati. So many, in every corner of India, every village, every language, there is some word for this. And it's a very ancient idea. Fate. But Vivekananda says it's neither the physical laws of this universe, nor is it karma. It is the will of God. All of it. So Vishveshwaram, the ruler, the Lord of this universe. What else? Vidita Vishwam. Omniscient, the one who knows everything. Our knowledge is limited. Even the greatest encyclopedia is limited. Elon Musk read the Encyclopedia Britannica twice. But even his knowledge is limited, even though he owns Twitter now. But Vidita Vishwam, the knower of this universe, who knows everything in detail. Now, let me just again do what is something unnecessary but interesting. When you become enlightened, the way it is said, the enlightened person knows everything. Sarvagya, all-knowing. Now, does that mean you know everything in detail? Do you know the past and present and future? Do you know the contents of all the encyclopedias? Elon Musk, you do. But other than that, do you know what's going to happen in the future? Do you know the discoveries of all the Nobel Prize winners now and in the future? Everything and everything that's happening in this universe, everywhere across the galaxies and multiverses. Would an enlightened person know all that? Or what then? In what sense is an enlightened person all-knowing? So in Advaita Vedanta, we say only God can know all this. God is said to be omniscient. This is what is said, Vidita Vishwam. But in Advaita Vedanta, the enlightened one, Jivan Mukta, Brahmagyani, is the knower of everything in the sense, the enlightened one knows that everything is Brahman, in that sense. A good example would be, the potter is making pots with a lump of clay. If you see the lump of clay and you see whatever pots are being made, one thing you can predict. Whatever pot the potter makes, whatever kind of pottery, whatever design, whatever he does, you know one thing is for sure. If he makes it out of that lump of clay, everything that he makes is basically clay. You know what it is. You know it. But what you will not know are the various designs which a skilled potter may make sometimes. Who knows? But you know in reality, it is that clay. Nothing but that clay, not one little bit more than that clay. The Brahmagyani, like that, he or she knows, I am Brahman and this entire universe, whatever form, whoever comes before him, is Brahman and nothing else. And that's enough for him. That's enough to liberate a person. So that's the reality. Names and forms, according to Advaita Vedanta, are appearances in Brahman. So whatever movie is being played, he knows it's a movie. In reality, it's the same screen. And he knows it's perfectly all right. Whether it's a comedy or a tragedy, it's perfectly all right. Whoever comes in front, he knows, the enlightened one knows, is Brahman. Totapuri, guru of Sri Ramakrishna, used to meditate in Dakshineshwar at night, under the banyan tree, and light a fire, the dhuni, the sacred fire, and meditate. Now there was a ghost, and so goes the story. Brahmadatta, a terrible demon who lived on that tree, and he would scare. It was like perpetual Halloween out there. Now everybody would be scared of going there, but of course not Totapuri. He would sit and meditate, and the ghost saw this was a tough customer, so he came down from the tree and like boo, tried to scare him. And Totapuri opened his eyes and looked at him and said, I am Brahman and you are Brahman too. Come sit and meditate. The ghost made a run for it. Oh God, where have I come? The enlightened one knows whatever comes is Brahman. All right. So not in detail. Is it possible at all to know in detail? God knows everything in detail. When you say God knows. It's his birthday of Swami Vijnananda in a couple of days, I think. On Monday. It's another story about God knows. So Swami Vijnananda at one time, he was in charge of an ashram in Allahabad. And he had to maintain accounts. So the auditor found there was always a GOK account. 2 rupees, 1 rupee, 3 rupees. And he asked, what is this? And he says the one he couldn't balance, the whatever was missing, he says God only knows account. Now why am I mentioning this? A couple of days ago, I got a call from a monk in Benares, the traditional monk. He says, so Swami, he talks in Bengali. So he says, what do you think about this doctrine? What we teach, does an enlightened one, Jivan Mukta, does that one know everything in this universe? Then I gave him the traditional interpretation, what I just said to you. And said, this is what we teach, and so. And then he said, yes, that's what we teach. However, if you take the Upanishads literally, it says the enlightened one becomes all-knowing. He becomes one with God. And God is all-knowing. So will he become all-knowing like God? And I gave him the reasons why it's not possible, nor is it necessary. And he says, I know, that's what we teach. But there is a deeper secret to it. And he discussed some very interesting ideas, which is not traditionally accepted in Advaita Vedanta, but very interesting. You will see how we work, in this book itself, you will see how we work around that problem of omniscience. We say, only Ishvara, God is omniscient, not even the enlightened ones. And the enlightened ones may, by the grace of God, or by some yogic techniques, know more than is ordinarily known. But in general, the enlightened one knows, I am Brahman, everything is Brahman. We had a very interesting discussion. In Jainism, the perfected one is supposed to be omniscient, knowing everything in detail. In Kashmiri Shaivism, the perfected one is said to be one with Shiva, Purna Hanta, and knows everything in the universe. Swami Vivekananda says, right now, the consciousness which we are, we operate through one brain and its associated nerves. The time will come when we will be able to operate through all brains, through all minds. That is not a traditional Advaitic interpretation. So there are mysteries within mysteries, who knows? But Advaita Vedanta is very strictly logical and minimalistic. You need to know that you are Brahman, you will be free. That's what you will know. Then, Vidita Vishwam, Anantamurtim, of many forms, of endless forms. Who is of endless forms? Vishnu, or God. What are the endless forms? Two meanings. One is the various forms in which God is worshipped in Hinduism. Vishnu. And Vishnu also, if you go to various temples of Vishnu, various forms of Vishnu you will find. Then Shiva. Again, many, many temples, and you will find many, many forms of Shiva. As a Shivalinga, as images, as the sky, as fire, and so many forms. And as formless, in male and in female form. When I'm asked to introduce Hinduism, I often say that it is so diverse that if you ask a question in Hinduism, the answer is always yes and no. Do Hindus believe in God? Yes, no. There's Sankhya that doesn't talk about God. Is God male? Yes and no. And so on. So Anantamurtim. And look, what is Anantamurtim? One reality. It's not polytheism as is usually understood. You can think of all kinds of forms of gods and goddesses with human form, with non-human form, formless. But they all are one reality, not many. One gentleman once told me, when you Hindus talk about God, it's sounds like a soap opera up there. So many characters and all there. What's going on, like every episode, what will happen in the next episode, like a TV serial. No, it's one reality. So, Anantamurtim. A second meaning of endless forms is this universe. It is Vishnu alone who has become this universe, or is appearing as this universe. So, everything in this universe is none other than God. Of all forms, all of us, we are forms of that one God. So, if God is appearing as this universe, then God is in trouble. There is so much sorrow and unhappiness and imperfection and disaster and trouble in this universe. So God is trapped in this universe. Because we are trapped. We are in trouble. That's why we have come for the Vedanta class. We have finally wised up about our situation. We want a solution to this. That's why we are here. So God is also in trouble. Next he says, Nirmukta bandhanam. Forever, completely free of all bondage. We are caught in the law of karma. Our past karma is upon us. Vivekananda says, good, good, bad, bad, and none escape the law. Whosoever wears a form wears the chain too. So we wear the chain. What is the chain? This body. Where is the chain? There's a chain of past karma upon us. It's invisible, but it's a burden. But it's sweeping us from lifetime to lifetime. But God is not like that. God has no burden at all. He's entirely free. no karma to work out. So God is entirely free. Swatantra it is called, the unlimited freedom of God. And did he become free by spiritual practices like us? Becoming enlightened and free? He says, no, nirmukta, forever, eternally free. He was never in bondage. And apara sukhamburashim, because of this eternal freedom, is unlimited ocean of bliss. Unlimited ocean of bliss. Shankaracharya, in one of his commentaries, he says, there is this unlimited ocean of bliss. The very spray, a little bit of which, the spray of this ocean, the world is madly running after. Trying to get a little bit of happiness, little bit of peace, little bit of joy. All the happiness, peace and joy that we are running after in this life, which we want, which we have tasted once in a while, fleeting. That's just spray, little bit of spray from this unlimited ocean. And then Shankaracharya, he lowers the hammer there. He says, and that unlimited ocean of bliss is you. It's within you, it is you actually. Anyhow, but here God is Sukhamburashim, the unlimited ocean of peace and bliss. Shri Vallabham. Whom are we talking about? I would like to meet this guy. It's Vishnu, the husband of Shri. So Shri Vallabham, Vishnu. And then he adds, so what is the nature of this Vishnu? Is it that guy with 4 arms and blue and is a couch potato, he always relaxes on the cosmic serpent Sheshanaga? He says, no, Vimala Bodha Ghanam. Bodha, consciousness. Ghanam, dense. Vimala, pure. Is pure consciousness and nothing else. It's just pure means only consciousness. Consciousness only. Awareness only and nothing else. This reminds you of the arati which we sang. Chidghanakaya. Singing to Sri Ramakrishna, Khandana Bhavabandhana. This is Chidghanakaya. What is the body of Sri Ramakrishna? Oh, there he is. It's a man with a beard. No. Vivekananda says, Chidghanakaya. His body is, Kaya means body. Body is consciousness only. Chidghana, consciousness only. There is nothing else there. Vimala Bodha Ghanam. Pure consciousness only. What do I do? Bow down. Namami, I salute. So this is a salutation to God. Again, perfectly all right. It would be some similar salutation you will come across even if it's a text of bhakti, dualistic schools of Vedanta. They will also do this. But the next one reverses it. It's stunning. He will say, this God, yes. Vishnu, yes. Who is the creator, preserver, destroyer of the universe, omniscient, omnipotent, of all forms in the universe. Yes, yes, I am that. You see. Please chant. Yasya prasadad ahameva Vishnu. Yasya prasadad ahameva Vishnu. Mayyeva sarvam parikalpitam cha. Mayyeva sarvam parikalpitam cha. Ittham vijanami sadatma rupam. Ittham vijanami sadatma rupam. Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. Tasyangri padmam pranatosmi nityam. I always bow down to the lotus feet of my teacher, by whose grace I have known forever that I am Vishnu, and the whole of the phenomenal universe is superimposed on me alone. What a stunning statement. He says, I bow down to my Guru, Pranatosmi, to the lotus feet of my Guru. Why? Yasya prasadat, by whose grace? He says, Vijanami, Ittham Vijanami, I know this. For certain, I have realized this, I have known this. What have I known? Ahameva Vishnu. This Vishnu, which was described just now, whom I saluted to, I am that. But you are just tiny, and this entire vast universe, Mayeva Sarvam Parikalpitam Cha. This entire universe, it's in me. In you, you're so tiny. No, the body is tiny. But the real me, which my Guru has shown me, in me, the entire universe. How? It appears in me, parikalpitam. It's not that I am full of quasars and quarks and blue whales and amoeba. I'm stuffed full of all sorts of things. All of this appears in me. Because, of course, I am being, existence, consciousness, Sat Chit. And Sadatma Rupam. I have known this forever. Atma Rupam, as I am that reality, that Vishnu. As Atman, not as body. Not even as the mind. Not even as this person, Shankaracharya. But in my real nature, I and that Vishnu are same reality. See, this is the same Shankaracharya who sings Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So A is equal to B is equal to C, so A is equal to C. If Shiva is equal to Shankaracharya is equal to Vishnu, then Shiva is equal to Vishnu. Yeah. Right? So that is the idea. All of these forms in Hinduism, and you extend it, for a Hindu it's very easy to extend it to Christianity, Islam, Judaism, all the theistic religions who believe in God. That when you talk about a God, the power behind this universe, it must be the same reality with various forms, various powers. Ittham vijanami. I have realized this. Sada, forever. It's not something that I have read and then I'll forget. I realized it in the Vakya Vritti, the retreat, but now I've forgotten. That is not realization. This realization is Sada, forever. Forever it is clear to me that I am that Vishnu, and Nityam, I always salute the lotus feet of my Guru. I found this in a Tibetan Buddhist Lama's instructions. The highest teaching, they call it the Dzogchen teachings, which is equal to this. It's very similar to the Advaita teachings we give here. One novice Tibetan Buddhist nun, she once told me, she told me that, the kind of things that you are doing, Swami, in the class. At that time I was teaching Drigdrishya Viveka, several years ago. In our tradition, the same thing is told to us in different language, but after so many thousands of prostrations, actual physical salutations. You go around, go to a pilgrimage to Kailasha and go circumambulate the Kailasha, doing Sashtanga Pranam across the Kailasha. Do like 100,000 chants of this mantra, perform these rituals, then go on this month-long retreats where only in a cave, only food will be given to you through a hole. All of that is done and then it is told. And you are doing it on YouTube. Yeah. Who knows what will stick with whom at what time? You never know. Then, so this is the chant. This is the salutation to Guru. Remember, at one level it is the salutation of Shankaracharya to his Guru Govindapada. Another level, he is talking about the identity of Jiva and Brahma. So very cleverly, he has introduced the theme of the entire book. Entire means it's a short book. The meaning of the sentence, which we will see. We haven't even seen the sentence yet. The meaning of the sentence has already been given by Shankaracharya. What is the meaning of the sentence? I and that Lord, we are one reality. But then how to realize it? That we will see. Now the actual dialogue between student and teacher starts from this till the end of the text. So the student is now going to approach the teacher. 3 and 4 are given together, so we'll chant them together. Tapatrayar kasantapta, kaschid udvignamanasa, shamadhi sadhane yukta, sadgurum pariprichhati, anayasena yenasman, muchyeyam bhavabandhanat, tanme sankshipya bhagavan, Tanme Sankshipya Bhagavan Kevalam Kripaya Vada. Kevalam Kripaya Vada. Scorched by the sun of the three distresses, with the spiritual struggle raging in his mind, endowed with self-control and other virtues which are the means to liberation, someone says to a teacher, a knower of Brahman, "Have unadulterated mercy on me, holy sir, and please explain to me briefly the means by which I may become liberated from the bondage of this transmigratory existence without any difficulty." Okay, that's a mouthful. So the student has now come and approached the teacher. Look at the conditions. Tapatrayarka santapta. Facing sorrow and trouble in the world. Tapatraya. The three kinds. So they have categorized all the pains and sufferings in the world under three headings. The Adidaivika, the natural calamities, cold and heat and earthquakes and whatnot. And then Adibhautika, the sorrow that comes from other beings. It might be the coronavirus or might be an annoying neighbor or whatever. So all kinds of sorrows which come from living beings. And Adhyatmika does not mean spiritual here. It comes from our own body-mind. See, ultimately all sorrow to affect me has to come to my body-mind. I must know of the sorrow, then only it affects me. But still, some have their origin outside, some have their origin within. Some are in the local, some are physical powers, natural powers, and some are inside this body. Poor health, could be poor mental health also. So all of this, physical and mental illness, suffering, disease, poverty, then natural calamities, all of this, relationships, sorrows, loss, all of this, tapatraya, three kinds of, that compared to burning heat. Arka means sun, which is, sun is very nice. Yes, here in the fall and in winter, in Chicago, it's in the windy city, and New York, Boston, it's cold. The sun is very nice, but you have to think about India at the peak of summer. So it's an affliction, it's very hot. Tapatraya arka, like a sun scorching you. Santapta, scorched. What happens because of this scorching? Something very important happens. One becomes agitated, troubled, deeply unhappy, seeking a solution, struggling. Why is this happening? Is there an end to this? Is there some deep solution to this? I won't go into the details, but just for your reference, one of the most ancient philosophies in the world, spiritual philosophies, is Sankhya. Swami Vivekananda called it the most ancient. And probably the oldest Sankhya text, pure Sankhya text available to us is called Sankhya Karika. Sankhya Karika, written by a monk called Ishvara Krishna, long, long ago. How long ago? There is a nearly 2,000-year-old Chinese translation of Sankhya Karika, made by, the sources say, made by a Brahmin called Paramartha from Ujjain, nearly 2,000 years ago. And that's just what is available to us. So even before that, so this is Sankhya Karika, and it was a text assiduously studied in the ancient world, in the Far East, not just in India. Anyway, the first verse of the Sankhya Karika, the first verse, gives a compelling case for spiritual life. Why should we at all be interested in any of this? Why have human beings been interested in this for as long as we know? So the first verse goes like this. Dukkhatraya abhighatat jihasa tad apaghatake hetu drishte sa partha chet na atyanta ekanta abhavat. I'll just translate to you, it's so moving. It says, afflicted by the three kinds of sorrows, sorely troubled, hurt, wounded by the three kinds of sorrows. An enquiry arises, how can I get rid of this? How can I overcome sorrow, suffering in life? And then he raises a counter question in that verse. Well, there are ways of solving this sorrow in this world. There are worldly ways of solving. You're sick, go to a doctor. You're bored, switch on the TV, you'll be even more bored. So, and there are community problems, social problems. There is politics to solve that, economics to solve that. I'm not just making this up. I'm translating from a commentary on the Sankhya Karika by one of the greatest Indian philosophers, Vachaspati Mishra, called Sankhya Tattva Kaumudi, the moonlight of Sankhya, the essence of Sankhya. I'm just translating his commentary on that. This was written exactly 1,000 years ago, around 1000 AD. He says, go to a doctor. Entertain yourself. No TV at that time. Entertain yourself. There is entertainment if you're bored. If there are problems in the community, he says, Arthashastra, economics is there. There is politics. There are disasters. There is protection. Like in shelter. So earthquake shelters or whatever. Why? Why not do that? Why pursue this kind of a solution? And then the next part of the Karika says, why? It says, because there is the worldly solution, anything in this world, they have two serious defects. One is, there is no guarantee that it will work. Even the best of medicine sometimes fails. We saw this in the pandemic. Our oldest member, Bill Conrad, he was one of the first to get it in the first wave in New York when there were approximately, I remember at that time, 1,000 deaths per day in that city alone. They had put up the pulsating red light on the Empire State Building to show that the city is in distress. So he got it. Elderly. He was 96, 97 at that time, 96 years old. At that age, he got COVID in the first wave. He came home in 3 days perfectly all right. He's still going strong. And we heard of younger people in the 20s, 30s dying. Not one or two, in the hundreds and thousands. How do you know? It's not certain. Ekanta bhava. There is no direct, there is nothing that you can predict. You can talk about averages, that's fine. But particularly one case, what will happen, we don't know. And then other great defect of anything that you try in the world, atyanta bhava. There is no lasting solution. Cure this disease, the next one will get me. Come out of this problem, another will arise. Eat today, tomorrow you will be hungry. So, there is no lasting solution anywhere. Is there any lasting solution, any certain solution? This is the question on which depends spiritual, not spiritual. And those who take it seriously, the teaching of all the world traditions, mystical traditions and spiritual teachings, this and whatever, they say, yes, there is a solution. All of these books, all the great masters in every spiritual tradition, they say there is a deep and lasting solution. Call it enlightenment, God realization, nirvana, moksha, the Sankhyanas call it kaivalya. It is there. If you take it seriously, yes, there's a solution. So that is the case for spiritual life, he says. There is a deep, lasting solution to the problem of suffering. And certain, absolutely certain solution. Proof is the life of the enlightened ones. You just see. They're among the most inspiring characters in human history, in every tradition, throughout human history. The deeply spiritual enlightened ones. Okay. Udvigna manasa. First stage. Suffering is not enough. One must awaken to suffering, that there is a solution. Samyak drishti. The right view. And after getting the right view, samyak sankalpa, I will do something about it. I am rightly resolved that I will seek out liberation in this life. And then preparation. Shamadhi sadhane yukta. So this book, Shankaracharya is in a hurry. What will take pages in other books, in Vivek Chudamani, page after page goes in description of the preparatory qualifications, the foundations, So today's subject is foundations for the path of self-enquiry. Foundations. He has given one word for it here. Samadhi sadhanir yukta. Equipped with the practices, the qualifications which are necessary for enlightenment. So we will also be in a hurry. I'll just quickly list it. I will not dwell on it. We'll just go ahead. But many of you are Vedanta veterans, so you know. At least we know the list. Sri Ramakrishna used to say in Bengali, "Mukhe bola soja, tablar bol, hate tola mushkil." It's very difficult. It's very easy to tell what you call bol in English, the rhythm, the notation, the musical notations. One can recite it, but very difficult to play it on an instrument. In Hindi, you'll say, "Tabla ka bol, muh mein bolna aasan hai, haath mein bajana mushkil hai." So, at least we can tell the bol. I remember once, a long time ago, 25 years ago, I tried to learn Pakhavaj. I'm very unmusical. So Pakhavaj is a difficult instrument, classical musical instrument. And a monk was going to teach us, the youngsters who had come to become monks. So I recited. At night I'd memorized the notation. I recited it fluently. He said, no. You have to show me on the side. That was the end of my Pakhavaj lesson. Anyway, let us just recite it. Fourfold qualification. Viveka, you can repeat it after me. Viveka, Vairagya, Samadhi Shat Sampatti, Mumukshutvam cha. Okay, what does it mean? Viveka, the discernment between the eternal and the non-eternal. The intuition that there is some ultimate reality and this whole world is non-eternal, transitory, valueless, ultimately. Vairagya. Vairagya means dispassion. Dispassion for what? Not for Brahman. For the world. Sri Ramakrishna says ones and zeros. He was long ago, before IT and binary digits and all that came. Ones and zeros. Sri Ramakrishna was speaking about ones and zeros. He said, everything that you gather in this world is like putting zeros one after the other. As many zeros as you put, the total is just zero. But if you put the one, then you still have the one, and all the zeros after it just adds value to it. But even if you don't have the zeros, the one is still there. That's the source of all value. And didn't explain even what is the one, what is the zero. So Vairagya, that the zeros by themselves don't amount to much. But the one is necessary. Vairagya is dispassion for the non-eternal. And Sri Ramakrishna would always put it positively, a passion for God. You're seeking God, Ishware Anurag, Vishaya Virag. An Anurag, passion for God. And then, Shat Sampatti, quickly. Shamaha. Shama, repeat. Shamaha. Shama means serenity of mind or control, quietude of mind. Damaha. Damaha means control of the sense organs. Then Titiksha. Titiksha means spiritual toughness, fortitude. There will be a lot of problems. As there are problems you want to get a degree, you have to face problems in life, education. You want to have a relationship, you have to face problems in life. You want to raise a family, you have to face problems and a lot of tough challenges over many years in life. If you want to hold on to a job and build a career, you have to face problems. If you want to build an institution, a business, you have to face problems, and over many years you have to nurture it. So many problems are there in worldly life. Similarly, problems will keep coming even if you want spiritual life. Just because I've decided to be a sadhaka doesn't mean it will be a cakewalk. So, the toughness, I will hold on to this. No matter what comes in my way, my sadhana will go on. Spiritual toughness, titiksha. Till the end of my life, I will seek God and this will not stop. Titiksha. Titiksha is spiritual toughness, fortitude. Then, uparati. Uparati. Uparati means disengagement, not too much partying in the world, not conducive to Vedanta. So this is just the reverse of partying. In the evening, weekend, you're sitting and listening to an obscure old philosophy. So, uparati, reverse that. Rati means going out into the world and enjoyment, sense enjoyment. Uparati, reversing. Then, samadhana. Samadhana. Samadhana means focus. Now that you have reversed it, now that you have withdrawn, you have got time and energy, opportunity. Use that. And then focus on Vedanta, on meditation, on spiritual practices. Then Shraddha. Shraddha. Shraddha is what is given by the teacher and in the text. I have a deep, abiding faith in it until I get to realize it for myself. Until I see, this is experiential. Vedanta, in fact, in common with all the Indian philosophies, it's ultimately experiential. It's the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and like the flan we had today, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So you will get that experience. But until that time, at least, one must hold on to it. There is something real in this, something worthwhile. I'll hold on to this. So we had Shama, Dhamma, Titiksha, then Uparati, Samadhana, Shraddha. So have we had 6? Yes. Then last one, Mumukshutvam. Mumukshutvam, intense desire for freedom from samsara. So already equipped with these, Samadhi sadhane yuktaha, equipped with these. Oh, I don't have it. You should have told me earlier. No, we all have it. And we need to work on this to take it to a degree of excellence. We have it just because you're sitting here, I can say that you have it. To some extent, we all have it. But we need to make them, polish it. Intense viveka, intense vairagya, strict control on ourselves, an intense desire for spiritual liberation. So, Sadgurum Pariprichati approaches a guru. Who is a guru? Then there are all discussions on who is a guru. Sadguru, who is a Sadguru? No, I know. He may be. I'm not saying that he is not. But what I mean, there is a description in the Upanishads. Shrotriya Brahmanishta Akamahta. I will not go into the details. One must be a master of a tradition. Here Vedanta clearly means master of the Vedanta tradition, master of the Upanishads. This teaching lineage, one must be part of it. Shankaracharya is very harsh on the self-declared geniuses, spiritual geniuses, Said, which tradition do you belong to? Nothing. I made it myself. So made it yourself. It is a code for saying I made it up. Shankaracharya says in harsh language, in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Sarva Shastra Vidopi Asampradayavit Murkhavadupekshaniya. Even if a person has read all the books, does not belong to a particular tradition, does not know the tradition, of course he means the Vedanta tradition there, that person, he may have read all the books in the library, deserves to be ignored like a fool. As you would ignore a fool, just ignore him. What if he is enlightened? Ignore him. Why? Because he is of no use to you. A person who does not have the capacity to transmit that, even if the person is a genius in its own level, all right, I respect that, but it's of no use to me. So, Shrotriya. Then Shrotriya means literally well-versed in the Shruti, in the Upanishads. Then Akamahata, does not have any personal desire, any particular motive for personal gain involved in that. Brahmanishta is not a part-time teacher of Vedanta. What do you do in my part-time? I give enlightenment to people. It's like a weekend job. No. Brahmanishta means completely dedicated to Brahman. Life is centered, God-centered life. Nothing else. These are 3 characteristics of a guru in the Upanishads. Shrotriya, Akamahata, Brahmanishta. Anyway, I will not go into the details. That's the description of Sadguru. So he goes to a Sadguru and asks this question. And then what is the question? Anayasena yenasman muchyeyam bhavabandhanat tanme sanshipya bhagavan kevalam kripaya vada. Tell me how I will become enlightened. A smart guy. Look at the 3 things he says. First of all, I want to become enlightened. How? Anayasena, easily. I am not going to put in too much work. He knows. You're going to make me do all sorts of spiritual practices. No. I don't have time for that, nor am I signing up for that. Just 3-day retreat, and that's it. Nothing before that, nothing after that. Do whatever you can. It has to be as easy as that. Anayasena, easily. Well, I can become enlightened, free of bhava bandhana. Bandhana, bondage, not only in this life, lifetimes of bondage, I want to be free, but easily, number one. Then, also, Sankshipya, tell me the teachings in brief. Don't go on and on and on. Yeah. Sankshipya, tell me in brief. And I remember sometimes I'm recognized in Central Park when I go for a walk. So when this guy caught me in Central Park and he said, "Hey, you are the guy who gives us long lectures on YouTube. You're the guy with the really long talks on YouTube," he said. I said, "Guilty as charged." So this guy is the student is very clever. He says, Sankshipya, in brief. Tell me in brief. And also one more condition. Kevalam kripaya. Out of your unadulterated, unmixed grace. Don't expect anything from me. I am not going to give you a donation. I am not going to serve you, Guru Seva, all of that. I'm just joking. I'm sure he will do. He's a good student. But he says, just out of your grace, unconditionally, out of your grace, teach me in brief and easy. What do you want? Enlightenment, freedom. From lifetimes of freedom. And from lifetimes of bondage. I want freedom. Vada, teach me. In the Sri Ramakrishna Upadesha, the words of the master, that little book, Swami Brahmānanda has collected the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna in this short book. Very, very interesting collection. There, the third point, it's just little single sentences, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. At the very beginning, Swami Brahmānanda says, somebody, and look at this. Who is the student? It says, somebody. No name is given. Somebody, kaschit, somebody asked the teacher. At least the teacher has a name, teacher. Sadguru is a teacher. But the student has no name. He just says, somebody. Swami Brahmānanda says, somebody asked Sri Ramakrishna, teach me spirituality in one sentence. Teach me spirituality in one sentence, or make me enlightened in one sentence. And look, he's tying down Sri Ramakrishna. Not just give me enlightenment in one sentence. He knows otherwise the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, 1,000 pages is there. Sri Ramakrishna might give him a copy. Say, read this. One sentence. And then Swami Brahmānanda says, Sri Ramakrishna said to him, that somebody said to him, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. The Brahman is real, the world is false. Eiti dharana karo. Assimilate this. And then Swami Brahmānanda adds, having said this, Sri Ramakrishna fell quiet, fell silent. Why did Swami Brahmānanda add that? He fell silent because it adds emphasis. You wanted it in one sentence, here it is. Brahman is real, God is real, Brahman is real, whatever way you take it, the world is false. He didn't even say, you are Brahman, read Vakya Vritti, no. Brahman is real, the world is an appearance. And then Sri Ramakrishna fell silent. Swami Brahmānanda adds. And it's been mistranslated in English. If you go to the English translation, it's in the words of the master. In Bengali it is, Iha bolia teni chup koriya rohilen. Having said this, he remained silent. In English it is translated as, Brahman is real, the world is false. Contemplate this and keep quiet. That keep quiet was not part of the instruction to the All right. The next few verses I'm going to rush through just in 1 minute. You will know what it is. I'll just tell you in brief. So the Guru says, well put, great question. And I'm going to tell you the answer. One sentence, briefly. Listen carefully. That's the next verse. Let us chant. Guru Ruvacha Sadvite Vachana Vyakti Sadvite vachana vyakti pratibhati vadamite. Pratibhati vadamite. Idam taditi vispashtam. Idam taditi vispashtam. Savadhana manashrinu. Your question is great. I will tell you the answer. This answer I will tell you now very clearly. So listen with full attention. So you can imagine that person must be eagerly listening. Sadvite vachana vyakti. You have put the question very well. The question which was asked, how can I be free from the suffering of this world, from lifetime after lifetime? Tell me, teach me. That's the question you should go to a spiritual master, a monk, or a teacher with. We have this joke in our in India especially, because we have many other activities, schools, hospitals, especially schools and colleges. So when people come up with great devotion, Maharaj, I have a question. I said, yes, what is the question? Not how will I get free, how will I get enlightenment? I said, no, how can I admit my son in your school? That is the question they have come with. That is not the question you have to go to a spiritual teacher with. In Uttarakhand also, they know, in the Himalayas, there are funny stories. They believe that the monks know the secrets of how to, who will win the lottery. At least they don't ask us that, but little less educated in the villages, in the mountains, so they want to get rich, and there are lotteries, and they ask for a tip from a monk. A monk once told me that I was going to Vrindavan, from Mathura to Vrindavan. On the path, this one man, they'll offer you something, food or something. Now you are obliged. And then the man asked me, Mahatma ji, number bata dijiye. Oh, monk, tell me a number. Number means he wants a... I said, then what did you do? I said, all right, sit here, wait. I'm going to Vrindavan, I'll be back on this path, and then I will tell you. So he sat down with, they have great respect. He sat down with respect. I said, but then what did you do? You're trapped. There's only one path. He said, then I went to Vrindavan, and then I stayed there for 8 years. Now the teaching. Tattvam asyadi vakyotham, tattvam asyadi vakyotham, yajjiva paramatmano, yajjiva paramatmano, tadatmya vishayam jnanam, tadatmya vishayam jnanam, tadidam mukti sadhanam. Tadidam mukti sadhanam. What is the way to freedom? He says, jnanam, knowledge. What jnanam? What knowledge? The identity of jiva and paramatma. Jivatma and paramatma, the supreme self and the individual self. Identity of supreme self and individual self. That knowledge. Where will that knowledge come from? Vakyotham. It will come from a sentence. What sentence? Tattvamasyadi. Sentences like, you are that. Like that means, what are the other sentences like that? I am Brahman. Consciousness is Brahman. That thou art Tattvamasi. This very self is Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. So the Mahāvākyas. The Mahāvākyas will lead to a knowledge. Knowledge of what? Identity of Jiva and Jivatma Paramatma, the individual self and the supreme self. That knowledge is the sadhana, is that which will set you free, is the method or the instrument of your freedom from bondage. You asked, what will set me free from bondage? This is what will set you free from knowledge. Knowledge will do it. What knowledge? Identity of Jiva and Ishvara, that is Jivatma, Paramatma. Where does this knowledge come from? From a sentence. What sentence? Sentences like Tattvamasi. Even like means the other Mahāvākyas are there. Now the student asks, and there's a reason I'm rushing through this, because the real teaching will start, and for that we have to wait till tomorrow, but a couple of verses here. Naturally, the student asks for more details. Shishya uvacha ko jiva kaparaschatma ko jiva kaparaschatma tadatmyam va katham tayo tattvamasya vakyam va katham tat pratipadayet. Disciple asks, who is the individual self? Who is the universal self? How can they be identical? And how can the sentences like thou art that prove their identity? So these questions, naturally, you want to know a little more. You say Jivatma Paramatma, individual self, supreme self. What do you mean? What is an individual self? What's a supreme self? What's their identity? And how does it come from a sentence? And you can ask even further. Even if I know this and hear this, how will it change my situation? How does a sentence set me free? Or even understanding a sentence, how does it set me free from suffering? I have real clear issues in this world. How will they be solved by hearing this sentence or even understanding the meaning of the sentence? And now, what is the meaning of the sentence? What is the meaning of the words in that sentence? We'll leave it there. That will be our discussion tomorrow and day after. Now, we have run out of time, but still, if there is any question, anybody has any... Okay, so there's a hand up there. I think you have to speak into the microphone for the internet audience.
Testing.
Pranam Swamiji. The very first verse, it says salutation to Sri Ganesha. Is it just the Sri Ganeshaya Namaha? Because after that Vishnu comes and not Ganesha.
Yes, it's confusing, but actually it's a salutation to Ganesha at the beginning. Sri Ganeshaya Namaha. So we begin by salutation to Ganesha to remove all obstacles from the study of this text. Very traditional. One of the reasons, why are these invocations there? One reason is removal of obstacles to the study of the text. You wouldn't believe the amount of discussion and debate that has gone into these things. There is the Nayayikas who have entire sections. So they don't let go of anything without a debate and a quarrel. So you said, we shall start with an invocation. And the Nayayikas will say, why? Well, because, I'm translating from the greatest of Nayayikas, Gangesha, in Tattva Chintamani, again about 900 years ago. Masterwork. The Tattva Chintamani, the jewel of essence of philosophy, basically. So he says, why? Well, because if you ask for the blessings of God, the obstacles to the study of this text will be removed. Then the Nayaka will not let go. He says, but there are so many texts in which there are no such invocations and the books have been completed. There are so many texts where there are these nice invocations and the books have not been completed. Go to a manuscript library, you will see. So invocation doesn't work. It doesn't remove obstacles. Then you'll have to say that, then the answer is, well, for those texts where there is invocation and yet not completed, they should have done more invocations. And there are those texts in which there's an invocation, there's no invocation, but the text has been completed, they must have done invocations in their past lives. You might think this debate is silly, but the conclusion they come to is surprisingly modern. The conclusion they come to is, who? The Nayayikas, Gangesha's time. It's called Mangalavada. Debate on the invocation. The conclusion they come to is, the minimum we can take away from this debate is, the invocation is done, it says, Shishtachara, to preserve a culture. Which is a beautiful modern conclusion, he says. And, like for example, if that has to be done, then why doesn't the teacher do it in his mind? Why does he say it out loud? Because to preserve a culture, you must hand it down. The students must learn to do this. The rest of it, see, they are so open-minded, and whether God is listening to you, whether God blesses you with completion of this text or does not, you don't get to complete the text. That's up for debate. we don't know, we have different opinions on it. But clearly this is a tradition which is a wonderful tradition, worthy of being handed down. See? And this is 1,000 years ago. That's the conclusion they came to. Somebody else had a question? Okay. Yes, a question here. Shravani here.
You mentioned about the Sankhya, Swami Vivekananda says Sankhya is the oldest
philosophy.
Is it because Kapila started it?
He says Kapila was the first philosopher of humanity. Kapila, the founder of Sankhya.
However, doesn't it borrow from Nyaya philosophy also?
No.
Nothing. Isn't Nyaya philosophy the oldest or something?
No, Nyaya seems to be little later. The sutras, see, Sankhya, I said the oldest available text is Sankhya Karika. Normally for all these philosophies, darshana, there are sutras. So for example, Vedanta as a philosophy, it would have to be traced back to the Vedanta sutras or Brahma sutras. In Sankhya, the sutras are not available. There is something called Sankhya Sutra. If you look it up, it's there, but it was something reconstituted much later. The original Sankhya Sutras are probably lost. It's that ancient. And you find references to it throughout. Bhagavad Gita liberally refers to Sankhya, though in a different sense. The Buddha, 2,500 years ago, he went to some teachers before he went on his own. Uddalaka, Ramaputta and some others. And then later when he refers to their teachings, you can clearly see two things. They are his teachers who taught him, like some kind of proto-Sankhya and proto-Yoga. Patanjali Yoga. So that's that ancient, long before the Buddha himself.
Okay. Because the epistemology in terms of pratyaksha and all that, isn't that Nyaya first?
Yes, Nyaya. Sankhya's also developed it. The thing is, those developments came slowly afterwards. A lot of the epistemology was developed in debate with Buddhists, for example, over a period of several centuries. Okay, last question.
Swamiji, there are different, I forget the technical term for it, but versions of Advaita Vedanta, and one of it is, it wasn't created, dishti, shishti, shishti, drishti. There's another one where it was just projected, and Holy Mother said, yes, it is like, how you just enter into a dream. So then what is God's role as a creator mainly in such a thing? It's not created per se, it's just projected. And the other sort of example is the rope and snake. So are we saying God created the non-existing snake?
Not non-existing, that's why achintya. Non-existence is, if it did not exist, then you would not see it. I'm not even talking about the rope. Even the snake. According to Advaita Vedanta, even an illusion,
yes,
an appearance, has some kind of illusory existence. Pratibhasika satta, they call it. Otherwise, you wouldn't see it. Suppose there is nothing at all. Do you see it? No. But if you're seeing something, it has at least a temporary existence, or at least an illusory existence, or at least some kind of a mirage, optical illusion. Something is there. So, two things. What's God's role in this? So can't God create a real universe? See, for practical purposes, for us, it's real. As long as we are in this state, you have to deal with it as if it's real. You say, why say as if? Why not say it's real? Well, if it's all real and it's not as if, then none of this will work. See, when knowledge, you have to ask the question, when can knowledge set you free? Only knowledge. Knowledge can set you free if the source of your bondage is ignorance. Then the product of ignorance is error. So if our bondage is an error, then only, why then is this error there? Because of our ignorance. Ignorance of what? Our real nature. Then knowledge of our real nature will remove that ignorance, the error will be corrected. But if it's really a rope which binds you, really a snake which is there, not a rope, an actual snake, then no amount of thinking, it's not a snake, it's a rope, the snake will come and bite you. So, That's why it's the Advaitin who says it is knowledge which is required, because ignorance is the source. If ignorance is the source, then this world appearance, it must be an appearance. And remember, appearance in what sense? It's not that the world goes away when you become enlightened. Like the snake rope example can be misleading, because actually when you see it as a rope, then you don't see the snake anymore. But for example, consider the blue sky. You realize it's not blue when you read how light is scattered and it gets a blue hue, blue color, but it's actually colorless space. The water, today I was seeing such a beautiful reflection of fall colors as it became evening. Red and gold and yellow and brown, green. And as it became darker and darker, all of that disappeared. Now the fall colors reflected in the water, they were an appearance. And even when they were reflected, that glorious array of fall colors, what was there? Water and water alone. What's there now? You can't see any fall colors now. Water and water alone. Tomorrow early in the morning, you'll see glorious reflection of all the fall colors and the sky also, in the water. What is there? Exactly the same thing which looks so dark now. So in the same way, the entire universe, he says, Mai parikalpitam, it appears in Vishnu, it appears in me.
But Swamiji, I am not seeing Brahman, but I'm seeing the universe or the appearance, the illusion that's created by Brahman, by Ishvara, because of my ignorance. So out of my ignorance, I see something that was created by God. How it's not making too much sense for me to be, why is God creating something that I'm seeing, but only because of ignorance? Is the point that I should look deeper to see that the reality is right there?
Right, exactly. That's well put. God doesn't want us to see the illusory world out of ignorance. God wants us to see the world all right. If you have eyes, you will see form. If you have ears, you will hear sounds. If you have a mind, you will think. The difference is what knowledge does and what ignorance does. In ignorance, we just see this world and ourselves. We see in our minds thoughts, feelings, emotions. We see the world outside and we interact. We enjoy and suffer. In knowledge, upon realization, we will see exactly the same thing, hear exactly the same sounds. All of this will continue exactly, except with a vast difference, we will now see it all as grounded in God, in Brahman. Brahman alone appearing, the one alone appearing in all these ways. Then it's fine. So God's projection will continue even after you're enlightened. The enlightened person also sees, hears, smells, tastes, touch, thinks, feels. Also, in every experience, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, thinking, feeling, desiring, experiences God. Because he sees it's God alone appearing as all of this. So then that solves that person's problems.
So is it right to think on these lines, Swamiji, that the creation is there, all this illusion is there for one purpose, and that is for our enlightenment?
Yes. Our enlightenment, and you see, if it's post-enlightenment also no problem. You might say it's the very nature of God to shine forth. The question is, why at all this creation is there? Why at all? One of the answers is what you have given. Vedanta says, for our enlightenment. But there are other reasons, other ways of putting it. It's God's Leela. Sri Ramakrishna would say it's the play of God. This kind of projection. Or another answer, the final answer which I have found, Gaudapada's answer, the extreme Advaita answer. Devasya esha svabhavayam. This is the very nature of that ultimate shining reality. Deva is the shining reality. The shining reality shines forth in these ways. It's a problem for us as long as we don't see that reality, then we see this as a separate world. I am separate and I'm struggling with this. When I see that reality, it sets me free. It makes you limitless. We'll see tomorrow how it makes you limitless. More questions? Okay, last question there.
Thank you so much, Swamiji. It was kind of your question that reminded me of a question from earlier when you were talking about the monk who was kind of questioning the mystery of What was it that if you become enlightened, Jivan Mukta, then are you omniscient? Do you have all the powers? It feels there's like a confusion of dualism and non-dualism, because it was the same issue I was having about, do you maintain some dualistic understanding even after you see the truth of non-dualism? Like, if you have the realization of non-dualism, then you would be seeing like all the details of the snake, in terms of the omniscient, all of the details of the world. There's some confusion there for me.
Right.
What remains of dualism when you realize non-dualism?
What remains when you realize...
Who is there left?
True. Yes and no. When you realize non-dualism, you still as long as the body continues, you still have this experience of the world. But see, even then language begins to failure. Does the body continue? We say, yes, we see the enlightened person. Look, those bodies are there. If you ask them, they'll say, yes. If you ask a little further, really? They'll say, no. But that we can't understand. It's very difficult for us to understand. So I can talk more about this later on, but I remember once in a discussion on Buddhism at Harvard, the professor was saying there's a debate about the Buddha becoming omniscient after becoming realized. But then this runs counter. Omniscient means, does the Buddha know everything? But according to Buddhism, especially Tibetan Buddhism, all that we now know, all this detail, it's false, it's an illusion. So does the Buddha know all the illusions? In that case, does the Buddha know nothing? Because Buddha knows only truth, and none of this is truth. So the Buddha knows nothing, emptiness only. So the professor gave a name. He said, the Buddha, is it brainstem Buddha, he called it. Is the Buddha reduced to a brainstem, comatose? You become enlightened, go into a coma, you don't see anything at all. No. The answer is, it continues exactly as it is. When you see a movie, and you realize it's a movie, do you stop seeing a movie? No. You can go on seeing the movie, but all of it is nothing but light and shadow, light and pictures and sound on a screen. Right? So then, if you ask, after your movie enlightenment, what happens to the hero? And what happens to the villain? Do they become one? No. And yet, yes. Because, you see? It may sound contradictory, but if you take a movie example, a dream example, it makes sense.
Thank you.
All right. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Rupanamastu.